Yeah, man. So thanks for spending your morning with me
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
here on the Prison to Promise podcast. And I think I may have sent you an email describing what we try to do here, which is really to capture the stories of post incarceration success,
Yeah.
whatever that might look like. And the whole hope is to use these stories to encourage other people who are going through similar circumstances or who are anticipating being released back into the community, as well as, to encourage them, as well as their family members. And I think also maybe to also um, shed light on the variety of talents, education levels, capabilities, capacity in general to be a upstanding person, for all of the community to see.
Yeah.
So maybe, if you would, man, introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell them a bit about who you are, where you're from, maybe how much time you've done, and how long you've been out.
Okay. I'm Paul Campiche. I am, 34 years old. I have a lot of education. Um, I was incarcerated for 21 months in prison. I've also done time in jails and, county jails everywhere. Altogether, I spent about 3 years of my 20s behind bars. Um, Mostly marijuana charges, and yeah, it was a horrible experience, but something that I've really grown through.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Um, just going to prison, going to jail, period, is a horrible experience. And then having to be put in jail for, as you said, mostly marijuana charges. Um, that just kind of makes it even more ridiculous, I think, in this situation.
Yeah, actually, when I was on my very last leg of my sentence, when I was on supervision, marijuana became legal in Washington State, where I live.
Yeah,
Uh, the irony wasn't lost on me.
yeah, I'm sure, man. Wow. Yeah, that had to be like a punch in the stomach.
Yep.
You know, but one of the things you mentioned about your experience, is that you have a lot of education. So I'm assuming that you're talking about formal education,
Yep.
school. Yeah. And so that is, it's kind of, no, it's not even kind of, I don't want to use a qualifier, but it's different than what research shows us, which is that many
Yeah.
people who have lots of education or even, some level of advanced education are less likely to be incarcerated than those who don't.
Yeah. Well, I was born to affluence and I'm white male privileged, and I really recognize that. I was incredibly lucky to be where I was with, the kind of family that I had. Um, I made a good attempt at staying out a few times, but it was this last time that it actually worked. And the reason it worked, I think, has something to do with the education. Uh, I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, as well as two bachelor's degrees, one in poetics and one in psychology.
Mm.
So I've been through academia a few times. I graduated my first bachelor's degree from a jail cell
Yeah.
in Thurston County.
All right.
I had been sending in assignments via mail. The teacher knew where I was and let me do it anyways.
Correspondence
Uh,
courses you were taking.
yeah, yeah. Correspondence courses with the Evergreen State College.
That's dope.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And my master's degree, when I got it, 20 days after I got it, I went and did 21 months.
Mm. How about that?
So it was a bittersweet kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's an example of how incarceration can really throw water on any fire, no matter how bright it burns.
Wow. And so if we could stop right there, because I don't want to get lost, because I like that point you just mentioned, how incarceration can throw water on any fire, no matter how bright it burns. But if we could just go back a little bit, because you mentioned you think that having some education helped make the difference in you turning the curve and not going back. Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that and why
Yeah.
education matters?
So the reason that the education matters is it's about how serious someone takes you at a job interview, when applying for housing, all of these things. If you have a credential at the end of your name, people treat you differently. Um, I've often had the odd dichotomy of being both a person who's been incarcerated as well as a mental health professional. So I get treated both, very poorly and very honorably at the same time.
Yeah,
It's,
I can imagine.
yeah, it's an interesting thing. The education, though, uh, it really provided me with insight into what was going on in my situation. That is to say, that I took time to think about what wasn't working in my life.
Hmm.
And because I was studying psychology, I could notice when, you know, I had terrible thinking, just, stinking thinking is what they call it, or, just the case of the efforts,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And so, and you studied pretty much similar to what I study, psychology, um, mental health counseling, uh, health sciences, but it was all really about me trying to understand myself better.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we call, when we get to this level of understanding our thinking and those things that went into making us the person that committed whatever offenses that we did. um, I think we begin to develop what they call emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that's a great thing to point out. We also slowly develop what's also called emotion intelligence, and that's just being able to speak out loud about your emotions
Mm,
in an adequate and genuine way.
yeah.
That's something that, as someone who's been formerly incarcerated, I really think about a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember all the times when I was incarcerated and someone would just deny the fact that they had emotions in general.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was all very stoic, very straight faced, and
Yeah.
there was no room for tears. You don't
Right.
cry in prison.
No, you don't. And as you and I know, that can really be detrimental to the individual.
Yeah,
When you cannot access, or you have to deny some of the emotions that are in your wheelhouse. All of us have them. So yeah.
yeah. And one thing I really got to work on when I was incarcerated was my anger issues. I
Mm.
I've always had a short fuse, a hot
Hmm.
temper,
Hmm.
and that is something that's gotten me in trouble.
Yeah.
I got an assault charge for threatening to hurt someone.
Mm.
Uh, just a threat, but that's enough.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
it's a serious thing. And when I look back at my incarceration, I think a person in particular helped me, and he
Hmm.
didn't mean to. It
Yeah.
was a very angry and very violent man who I had a cell with. And in certain prisons in Washington, there are no help buttons. We
Hmm.
don't have those.
You just gotta live
So,
it.
yeah, if you get killed by your cellmate in your sleep, well, yeah, no help button. He'll
Yeah.
just notice you're dead after a while.
Right.
So it's like I met a man who could easily, just put me in a coma.
Yeah.
And he was my cellmate. And so I had to learn to take everything he was saying in stride and not get angry, because to lose my temper on him would be to lose a lot of my, like, physical health.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I think we come to these realizations when something's taken away from us or something is at risk. And like here, all right, your freedom was already taken, but now your health is at serious risk,
Yep.
so it becomes time to compromise or change. And I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
the
And
person
I've
that
always,
does it suffers.
yep. And I've always thought about the fact that it's it's fine to compromise a situation.
Hmm.
It's not okay to compromise yourself in a situation.
Right, right.
So like one thing I remember about incarceration was I had to keep myself from being angry because it just wasn't going to help. And I was angry about a lot of things. I was angry I was in prison.
Yeah,
Uh, I think everyone is.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So how did you help yourself not be angry?
that's a great question.
No.
I uh I I think it came when I stopped beating up on myself more than
Mm,
losing anger with other people.
mm,
Uh, when I got out, I was really lucky. I found a reentry organization out of South Seattle College
hmm.
that it it was an opportunity for me to give back to the community,
Yeah, man.
and it was something that actually helped me get purposeful, thinking, purposeful actions, and be a better person.
Through this reentry organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what it was South Seattle College's Justice Involved Solutions team.
Oh, wow.
And I had gone there to get help with the Social Security app.
Hmm.
And they know I had a master's degree. And so after I was done getting their help, they asked me if I wanted to stay after and help people with resumes.
Hmm.
I had free time, and so I did it.
Uh,
Uh, and the next week, I came back and did it. And then the next week, and now it's been a 9-year commitment every Saturday and Wednesday.
nice, nice.
Uh,
This is voluntary stuff you're doing.
yeah, and giving back to the community that I saw be so disenfranchised.
Wow, wow.
Uh, I saw so much misery and deprivation, disparity just in that place. It's a pandemic of
Mm,
misery.
mm.
It's everywhere.
That's a heavy insight, man. A pandemic of misery. Hmm. And so you're there just trying to give of yourself to help make a little difference, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I got the chance to do that. They eventually, one day when I came in, they had me talk to the class and tell them what my story was.
Hmm.
And that really, I remember it kind of shook me because I'd never articulated to other people really
Hmm.
what my prison experience was like,
Yeah.
because you don't really talk about your prison experience, especially with people who don't understand it.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's people who haven't had that experience. It's really hard for them to understand it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what did that do for you, once you started telling your story?
Um, it it really gave me a way to relate and empathize with the other people who hadn't been incarcerated or hadn't gone to prison, who
Hmm.
didn't really know what I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the giving back was the huge part. Telling my story was very, very fulfilling, and it made me feel better about myself.
Hmm.
It was finding my voice and my confidence.
Yeah.
But using my master's degree to help other people and get everybody the services, the jobs that
Hmm.
they need.
Yeah.
Uh, Eventually, I became the guy who you go to in Seattle to get a job for a felon.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
that's what I do every Saturday now. I operate as the employment guru,
Oh, wow.
and I've gotten literally thousands of men and women jobs.
Nice.
Like I can say that with just certainty, because we count every client who comes through
Hmm.
and we take notes on where they're going and what they did.
Hmm.
So it's something that I feel really, really awesome about, is
Wow.
that I feel fulfilled.
Yeah, yeah. Because in a sense, you're helping your fellow fraternity mates, sorority mates. Though sorority is for females.
Yep.
Still, we come from a unique group of people. Once we've been kissed by the uh, poison of the criminal legal system.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I grew up in a family that were lawyers, both my parents, and at one point, each of them had been a prosecutor.
Hmm.
So, one thing that I ran into was how my family didn't understand what I had gone through.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Uh,
you mentioned earlier, you were born of affluence, and you acknowledge that in white
yeah,
male privilege. So lots of people don't understand that, even though they have it. So that was deep for you to just
yeah,
bring to
it
the front.
really, it really was a matter of who was willing to give me a chance after I wasted all the chances they had given me before.
Hmm.
Uh, my family, in the end, have been really supportive, but I needed to earn their trust again, and
Hmm.
that was not easy.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
never easy.
absolutely, absolutely. I definitely know and understand. But after a while, after consistency, I think people have
Yep.
no choice but to either trust you or to leave you the hell alone.
Right.
Yeah,
That is exactly it.
yeah. And family wants to believe in you. I truly believe that. And
Yeah.
speaking of family, I'm thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but during your time of incarceration, you were getting some sort of emotional or financial support from your family.
Yeah.
There were expectations of you.
Yep.
And can you speak to maybe how that helped you get on the right track or not?
I I think one thing that really stood out to me that kept me on the right track from the beginning
Hmm.
was my mother, and how willing she was to, you know, put money on the phone, or put money for books,
Hmm.
or, send me a supply package, or,
Hmm.
you know, I, after I had been incarcerated, when I got out, I, uh, I went back and I had chosen two guys
Hmm.
that I was going to support in the exact way my mother had supported me.
Hmm.
And I did that because I had the privilege of
Hmm.
having such a great parent
Hmm.
who would be there for me.
Hmm.
The guys I chose, both of their families are all dead.
Wow.
They have no one. So,
Wow.
I get them packages, I get them phone money. They talk to me every other day.
Nice.
We write letters,
Mhm.
everything. And it it started the very first person I met in prison.
Right.
I still talk with them. Dre is one of my best buddies, and like, it's it's been 9 years, 10 years of being his friend.
Yeah, man. How important is it for people in prison to have those types of supports?
Oh man, just it's incredibly essential to have support on the outside, to have someone on the outside. And that's not just to get little things done like working on a release address. It's also to feel like there is an end to this sentence.
Hmm.
Every day I'd sit there, it would just feel like I was a million miles away from ever getting home.
Right, right, right. But
And
having that anchor in the community,
exactly.
yeah, lets
And
you have
it's
something to
it's
go to.
something that I plan to supply to the guys that I chose.
Yeah,
I
man.
chose two guys out of the entire crowd.
Hmm.
And one thing that's really powerful about that is it's not about giving back necessarily. It's about empathy.
Yeah, man.
Uh, I can understand that that's why I give back.
And throughout our conversation, you've been dropping these hints, these emotional hints, empathy, caring, patience, other things. We're talking about emotional intelligence, emotional acknowledgement, um,
Yeah.
emotional regulation, all of these things. And so at the core of it, I think what connects all of this is emotion. Sometimes ill emotions cause us to make decisions that lead us to prison.
Yep.
It's the same emotions that, if we can learn to harness them, can help us survive in prison and make a sensible and good transition outside of prison. And even though some people are still struggling, those of us who can empathize and still can connect with what people are going through, are very important to those people. Even
Yeah.
though some people that we love cannot empathize with us, you know, it makes it sometimes challenging. But emotion is the connection, is what I'm really highlighting here in this little
Yeah. It
speech.
really is true. Something odd is after I had been out for a year,
Mm-hmm.
on the day that I had gotten arrested,
Yeah,
like which was May 1st, I went and got a tattoo. I didn't get tattoos while I was down because I know that's not a good idea.
yeah.
Uh, you can get sick, you can get caught. It wasn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a tattoo, and I'm Jewish by origins,
Mm-hmm.
so this is significant because we're not a people who get tattoos.
Right.
I have my DOC number tattooed on the bottom of my foot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Why on the bottom of
uh,
your foot?
for several reasons. The big one is to remind me, and you kind of said this, that with a single step, I can be diminished to a number again.
Mm.
I can become a number just with one misstep.
Mm-hmm. Heavy.
Yeah, it's real.
It is
Is
really real.
with one misstep, I could lose all that rapport, all that trust,
Mm-hmm. All that,
all that love.
what do you want to, social capital?
Yeah, yeah.
How long have you been out, man?
I've been out about 9 years.
Yeah, so you've amassed a lot of social
Yeah.
capital, a lot of professional connections, personal connections.
Yep.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worth losing.
No, and it's that reminder. The tattoo is under my foot because it's no one's business.
Yeah.
Um, Also because yeah, wherever I go, I know that it walks behind me. It follows me. It's not going to go away.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, but I think
but
the things that we do, as you mentioned earlier, like having credentials behind our names, you
yeah.
know, put some weight on that, puts it behind us a little further.
Oh
You
yeah. No.
know?
It really does. Just education in general. Getting an AA degree is something substantial. It's
Absolutely.
never little.
Absolutely. And yeah, and sometimes I hear people tell me, oh, I only go to junior college, or oh, I only have an associate's. I'm like, man, that's
Yep.
amazing stuff. So what if you don't have a doctorate or a master's? You've taken a major step to educate
Yeah.
yourself, to enlighten yourself. So, big ups. But yeah, people definitely respect credentials.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when I got my master's degree, the amount of money I make per job, just it was incredible. And I say this not to just say that you should be greedy and you should look for money in your profession. I say you should do what you love and get paid for it.
Mhm.
Uh, but if you go through the slug and slaughter that education can be, there's a reward.
Absolutely.
It's stability.
Mhm.
Uh, and when you've been incarcerated, and wasted 10 years of your life going in and out. Stability is worth a lot more than you think.
Absolutely.
It's golden.
And this stability that you talk about, I think it has a lot to do not just with the opportunity to always land employment, but it helps. I think people have a stable way of thinking. When they can have
Yep.
a stable way of thinking, I think they're better positioned to make decisions that are going to empower their lives. And
Yeah, yeah,
I like to think of it as almost like, for me, the initial process of uh, educating myself was like the equivalent of a farmer's tractor tilling the land,
yeah,
tearing the land over, up and over, so that it can be prepared for new information to be inserted for growth.
yeah. And I had to challenge a lot of the beliefs that I had when I got
Mhm.
out. Uh, you
Mm.
know, ACAB, all cops are bastards. That
Right.
was I was, pretty cutthroat anarchist. Uh, and I got in trouble for assault on an officer.
Hmm.
And that that experience I had to grow out of.
Mm.
I had to realize that I had disenfranchised a man of his own safety and security.
Mm.
I, I threw something at him. But the idea is that we, as human beings and citizens in this society, can't do certain things.
Hmm.
And those limits, those demarcations are there for a reason.
Absolutely. Some things we can't do and some things we just should not do.
Yeah. And, you know, it's very easy to look at all the DOC and look at all the cops
Mhm.
and just have hate.
Mhm.
But I don't think hate alone is healthy.
No, no. And in most cases, I think hate by itself, or if it's accompanied by something, has the potential to destroy whatever is there.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Mhm.
and I actually have a thought on that is that when I get asked like, how do you get all the energy? How do you get all the chutzpah to go and do reentry and get people jobs? And you seem like one of my clients, my students said it seems like you never sleep. Where do you get that energy? And I tell them the truth, which is I have a lot of hate for the prison system.
Yeah, and that's a
I
healthy way.
And that's a healthy way to deal with hate, is to
Absolutely.
use it to get the things done that actually change things.
Mhm. And
You
then
know,
still destroy the prison system.
Angela Davis said something beautiful, speaking of destroying the prison system. She said that I am no longer accepting the things I can't change. I am changing the things I cannot accept.
Right on.
I
Yeah,
can't accept the prison system as it is.
right. It has to change.
It has to change.
Yeah, yeah. And that's some of the work I'm doing out here. You
Yep.
know, we are working on changing the way solitary confinement is being conducted in North Carolina's prisons, and we are demanding that the implementation of the Mandela rules are infused into policy and litigation. So just without demanding that prisons are should be changed, I think is to be complacent in the ongoing um, traumatization of human beings. You know,
Well, and it's just as easy as thinking about, like the Black Lives Matter movement.
right on.
Uh, like they have an incredible amount of purpose when it comes to using anger in a productive way.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I, I see that man being beaten to death and it gets me pissed,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I don't just assault an officer about it.
Right. You cannot.
You can't.
Right. And you were lucky. You could have gotten killed.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, they do it all the time. And
Absolutely. So
It's
tell
awful.
me, man, or tell the listeners. So we know that you do reentry work. We know that you've been out of prison for about 9 years. When you're not doing reentry work, because that sounds like what you do part time, what are you doing full time?
Usually I'm a mental health counselor.
Okay.
Uh, that is to say, I have like regular clientele that I see on a weekly basis.
Mhm.
I'm a shrink without the pills, you know?
Yeah. Nice. Right on. So you are practicing.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a difficult thing to get.
Mhm.
Uh, it took me a long time to get the licensure,
Right.
and I had to pull teeth just to do it.
Mhm.
Uh, but what I get out of that is an appreciation for my job,
Yeah,
you
man.
know,
Yeah.
that I feel honored to be able to do the kind of work I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, it's not just about having the education, it's about having the intelligence and the will to
Mm.
get things done. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of guys in prison have the intelligence. Uh, I
And
met a lot of guys who could really think and get around problems, and you
absolutely.
know,
And they have the will too. Just many of the guys have not had the opportunity to
yeah,
witness, and as you mentioned earlier, about witnessing depravity, a lot of the guys in prison are coming from deprived backgrounds. And
yep,
so it's difficult to get in a position to reach for some of these higher ambitions that they have. Mostly everybody has, I think, the capacity to achieve.
yeah.
But because of
One thing,
circumstances.
one thing I try to do is I try to get guys who are getting out a vocation or education.
Mhm.
I feel that a lot of times idle hands can be the devil's playground.
Yep, absolutely. We know that.
It's good to stay active.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if it's volunteering in
Yep.
between. But research shows, I mean, and confirms all of this, what we're just sharing, the
Yeah.
importance of vocation, academic education, knowledge of self, volunteering, pro-social activities, all this
Well,
helps you out of prison.
it's actually so the organization I work with, we've had contracts since 1996.
Hmm.
We've been going that long, and we have statistics that we can use to back our claims. We know that in Washington state, 67% of people who get out will return
Hmm.
within a year.
Hmm.
And that is scary.
Hmm. And
We
that's
also
according to
know,
the nationwide statistics.
yeah, yeah, well, that's low for weight nationwide.
Hmm.
We also know something that's unique, which is 72% of people who get resources and support or get aligned with what's called a coordinated care portal,
Hmm.
when they get set up to get those resources and that support,
Hmm.
72% of them stay out.
Hmm.
We have these little arm bracelets that we pass out to all the students saying we are the 72%.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
And
And so what we're
that's,
speaking of is the importance of supports
yeah,
and
yeah,
accessibility.
it's huge. It's
But I think
huge.
everyone wants to do good, man. I think everyone wants to do good. People don't want to sell crack or shoot heroin or
No,
rob banks or whatever, you know.
no, I understand that one. No one really wants to be forced to fight for their life. No one wants to be so damn hungry that they steal.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
when our guys get to our class, one thing we're very forward about is what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Sure.
and the domains and needs that people have.
Mhm.
It works like you can't expect someone to make huge changes in the way they think if
Yeah.
they are so hungry that they can't think,
Right. And all they're thinking about is getting food.
or shelter,
Yeah.
or where where am I going to sleep? What am I going to do? Where do I get a job? All these questions. And
Basic
for the most
fundamental.
part, there's there's very little in the way of answers.
That's
Uh, I got really lucky in the organization that I have been a peer advisor for 9 years. Ended up being a huge movement. Uh, we have every month we give out $72,000 of direct aid, and
nice.
the way we get that is we reach out to partners. That is to say that we reach out to, like, Red Bull is one of our sponsors.
Mhm, mhm.
So you reach out and you say, "Hey, would you like to support guys staying out of trouble?" And you just be like amazed at how many people are willing to support that.
Wow,
Uh,
that's great to know. That's great to know for myself,
yeah,
for
it's
listeners.
making partnerships in the community. Every donation we have
Mhm.
is something more that we can give.
Right. And that's what it's all about, giving folks an opportunity to find some stability. And with that
Yeah.
stability, they have a greater chance of advancing. Not everyone is fortunate enough to be released from prison back into a supportive environment, be that family or reentry organization or neighborhood. And so lots of times, as we know, people end up recidivating and going back to prison time.
Yeah, it was
You know,
I
but
was talking about, someone stealing to eat.
yeah,
That's a huge one. Is like, I think about it a lot
yeah,
because I've worked with the homeless a lot.
yeah.
And yeah, if someone's so poor that they can't afford to survive and
Yeah.
they steal to survive, that's a failure of our system.
And
That's
we
not a
know the
failure of
system,
the individual.
and we know the system continues to fail folks. But hey,
Yeah.
listen, we are up at about 2.5 minutes left in our time
Okay.
together. And so before we close out, I want to ask you to think about what would you entitle your journey from the time that you've been incarcerated to right now? If that was the title of a book or a movie or something, what would that be?
Something more than gold.
Something more than gold. Oh, that's beautiful, man.
I
Why is
think I think about the outsiders. I think about staying gold.
hmm,
I need to be able to stay better than just being rich or
yeah,
being privileged. I
yeah,
need to actually do something about the issues.
hmm.
I need to make change.
Wow, it's powerful, bro. That's really powerful. I love hearing that. And so, if people wanted to reach you, people wanted to follow up with you, is there a way that they can find you?
Yeah, my email, PCAMPICHE at ANTIOCH.edu.
Right on,
So
right on. Hey, Paul, it's been a pleasure.
always.
Yo, man, thank you for your time, and I will be in touch.
Yeah, definitely. I'll leave you here. Keep your head up.
Thanks, brother. Be well.